Well, while we're giving a couple more minutes here, I'll do a very, very brief introduction.
Cool.
Just kind of let everybody know what's going on and all that kind of fun stuff. Thank you for coming out today. This is going to be what we're calling the Autumn Author Showcase here. So you've got 5 local authors presenting on indie publishing, taking your questions, giving their answers, and then they'll be here to sign some books, sell some books as well, and they've got some giveaways, so I hear. We've got a couple other things coming up too that I'd like to mention. The big one, of course, is the Haunted Library. That's coming next weekend. That's where this room and the room over there becomes an entirely new space, a haunted house, essentially. We say about 8 and up is appropriate, but I've got a nephew who's 4 years old, and he's talking about it year-round. So kind of, juggle out and see what you think with the kids there. Also, we've got the calendars, so check those out. Those have all the details. You can go to cantonlibrary.org, check out what we got there. The events calendar is always updated there. So even if something changes in here, it's always updated online. But now it is time for me to introduce the author. Or would you guys like to introduce yourself?
You do your thing and then we'll all do ours.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
and we'll do our thing.
So for the 2017 Autumn Author Showcase,
Woo!
we have authors here, best-selling authors, by the way. Robin Peterman, J.M. Madden, Heather Sunseri, thank you, Chris Calvert, and Donna McDonald. And I will turn it over to the authors here, because that's what you're here for.
Okay. Thank you. We're glad you guys are here. We are a group of friends who ended up in a writing group together. We're going to introduce ourselves in a second, but I want to tell you why we seem so familiar with each other. We all started out with different careers. We are all now full-time writers. And our different career backgrounds help each other tremendously. You'll figure out why in a few minutes. But as far as introductions go, my name is Robin Peterman. I'm a New York Times and USA Today best-selling author. I am considered a hybrid author, which means I publish through New York and I publish indie. I write paranormal romance, snarky, sexy, funny, vampires, werewolves, witches. And I, in my former life, before, I was an actress. I've done Broadway, television, movies. Now I'm a writer, lacrosse mom, dance mom. And these women are part of the reason why I've had success. A group of really strong, brilliantly smart, amazing women. So that's me. Going on, I will introduce you to Donna McDonald.
Hi.
Microphone. Donna's so smooth.
Microphone. I write a little bit of everything. I've been writing for, I think I'm getting ready to start my 8th year here shortly. And I've been indie from the beginning, which means basically I was too different for a traditional house to go with anything I did. They said, oh, you're a good writer, but we can't sell what you're writing. So I thought, well, I think I can sell what I'm writing.
And she did.
And I did. I write contemporary romance, various heat levels, whatever you're interested in. I also write a little bit of paranormal and some
Explain what a heat level is.
I think heat level and paranormal.
No. Do you all know what a heat level is?
Do you know what heat level means? As far as sexy.
Whether or not it's sexy. Okay.
The newest series I have in contemporary is Closed Door, what they call Closed Door. So everything is, it's more about the romance, the sensuality than it is the sexuality of the romance. And but I write at different levels depending on which series you pick up. I also write science fiction, which is a little bit of a departure, but mine's like I wanted to write adventure stories, and I was a Star Trek person growing up. I'm a science
Nerd.
Okay, nerd. That's about what it is. So I do that too, and then I write a little, literally write a little bit of everything. So.
And next we have J.M. Madden.
I am a New York Times and USA Today bestselling author as well. I write mostly military romance, mostly disabled veterans. I'm kind of veering off into a little bit of a Western tangent right now, and I'm having fun with that. I've done paranormal actually, and a few other things too, but the military is what calls to me and what I love, so I'll be getting back to that soon. And
In your former life, you were
in my former life, I was a cop. I was a deputy sheriff in Muskingum County, Ohio, for 9 years. And hubby had to move to Kentucky for his job, and certifications didn't transfer over, so he's like, well, you're always writing, why don't you do something with it? So it's like, oh, I can't do that. But I'll always remember going into, so everybody know what Romance Writers of America is? Okay.
It's an
So-
association for romance writers, a national association.
And we had a local chapter in Lexington, and I remember going into lunch, and Teresa Medeiros was in there eating lunch. She's like, come on in. So that was like, okay, it's like a different path, but I'm gonna do it. So I am mostly indie published right now. I had a few that were with small EPUBs, but I'm slowly getting those back, and I'll be completely empty, which I love.
And so whenever we have law enforcement questions in any of our books, we go check.
Gun
I've done the check about
questions or
guns and
fights.
Yeah.
And if I don't know it, then Bruce does.
Yeah, Don's that's for Bruce in the back. Thank you, Bruce. And next we have,
I'm Chris Calvert. I write romantic suspense, thrillers, and I even have one book that's a thriller, more of a paranormal thriller. So I write a little bit on the darker side, but I still write romance. I published my first book in 13, yeah, I need help sometimes.
2013?
I thought it was the end, it was November of 2013, November 2013, so it was almost 2014.
Okay.
Nobody saw the book actually until 2014. I published it in 2013,
Okay.
nobody really saw it until 2014.
Okay.
So my very first book was Sex, Lies, and Sweet Tea, and it's been the #1 free book on Kindle before, so.
And who titled that book?
Robin titled it. We do this thing where I sometimes title her books and she sometimes titles my books.
Donna helps me with
Yeah,
words.
we share things. We
Yes.
help each other out a lot. My former life, I owned an advertising and marketing agency for 20 years. So I've always been writing. We were talking about blogging earlier. I mean, I started out, I always tell everybody that I had the job of making, hospitals and banks and things like lithotripsy, which is that machine that goes and breaks up kidney stones. I had to make all that sound sexy, like in brochures. And so Robin was really the one who was like, why aren't you writing a book? And I was like, you know what, if I can make that sound good, I'll try this and see what happens. And so, I don't know, 14, I've got 14 books out now. I just released a 3-book series October 6th, which is a straight up suspense thriller called Jane Doe. She's a covert ops woman who she kills terrorists on the down low for the government. So she's all thwarting all these attacks that we never know happen. And she's very good at it.
And Chris and I have been best friends since 7th grade.
Yeah, we've known each other forever.
We're in our 50s now.
You didn't really have to say that, but we've known each other a
But I
while.
did. And then we have,
I'm Heather Sinceri. I started out writing young adult. This was my first series, with the Mind Speak series. It's about human cloning. And then I wrote a dystopian young adult about a really bad virus. And then I switched over to writing romantic suspense. And I write romantic thrillers with happy, for now, endings. And in my former life, I was a CPA for 20 years. I did very huge tax returns for about 20 years and worked in a public accounting firm in Lexington, Kentucky.
So can you guess what questions we have?
For Heather, yes.
So I brought to, and I'm an indie published author, I brought to that world. I just felt like I'm good at looking at businesses, figuring out how they work. Publishing industry, as crazy as it is, I dove into it and started trying to figure it out. And as soon as I figure it out, it changes. And so I just keep doing that. And that's
When
kinda
we
what-
met Heather, we were doing a panel
at the Woodford
at
County
the Woodford
Library.
County Library, and Heather was in the audience and walked up and started talking to Donna and asking questions, and then it was all over.
Yeah.
I met these guys because they were on the Romance Writers of America group, the local group, and I showed up after a failed attempt and met these women, and it was the best thing I ever did. One thing I would add to my little story, before I lied my way into my first publishing contract. I went with Jennifer to a con called RT, Romantic Times. We were in Chicago, right?
Yep.
Chicago. I was unpublished writer at that point, and they were looking for contemporary romance, which I don't write. And I'm like, whatever, I'll go pitch. And I did. I got sick before we went down. Jennifer stood in the middle of a huge ballroom with a bottle of water, and I went up.
Hugs.
Yes, and hugs. And I went up to major New York agents and publishers, and I was an actor, you know, my whole life, and I clearly am a good liar, and pitched a book that didn't exist, and almost everybody asked for a full manuscript. So then I lied some more, and I said, after I had a panic attack, I said, that's awesome. I said, I need to go home and have it professionally edited, which meant write it. And I did, and I wrote a 95K book in 3 weeks, and I got shingles. I don't recommend this way ever. I would do it again in a heartbeat, and then I ended up with a contract, and then, great, yeah. Donna, you didn't say what you did in your prior life.
I'm one of those people with a 6-page resume because I did a little bit of everything. I went back to school in my 30s, so before that, I mean, I cleaned houses and I did all kinds of things. And then I went back to school, and then I ended up working for a newspaper. I've been a clerk. I've been pretty much everything. But what I did for the longest period of time was I was a technical writer, and worked for Lexmark. You probably heard of that. And I got laid off in like 2009. And then in 2010, I started writing for myself. And I was playing the query game, sending it out and getting back the, and I got this really wonderful soft rejections with people not being able to sell, or didn't feel like I could sell it.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to research and figure it out. I thought, well, I can do all the technical stuff. I have computer skills. I've put in networks before. Well, how hard can it be? And I had formatted books, technical books. So I had some background for it. I thought, I can do this. That was between November, and I think I finally went out like 6 months later with the book. It took that long for me to learn the process. But when I got done, I decided that nobody should have to wait that wanted to do this. And so then I went looking for support and found it in 8 women. And then the 8 women grew to 15, then it grew to 20. And then eventually it grew to 40 people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think before the year was out, 38 of those 40 people had published their first book.
That was the RWA group that we
No.
were talking about.
That was KW.
Okay, I lied.
So-
That was our, yeah. So explain how we broke into that.
So the group KIW, it came about because RWA years ago didn't really talk about self-publishing
At all.
at all. They considered it the same as vanity publishing. Does everybody know what vanity publishing is?
It's where you
versus
would produce a
self-publishing?
book and sell it out of your trunk of your car.
Basically, if your kid plays on the keyboard and you pay a company enough, they will print it for you.
Mhm.
You
That's
mean CD.
vanity publishing.
They'll print a CD for you.
No, they'll print a book for you.
No, I know, but you're saying if a kid plays the keyboard, they'll print
Oh,
those
on the
On your
computer.
keyboard.
Oh!
Dude.
Use the microphone.
They can hear me. But anyway, vanity publishing is basically, they will print whatever you give them, and they'll charge you extra for editing and all this sort of stuff. It's basically a money-making path, we'll say. In self-publishing, you hire contractors to do everything for you. So we go through the same steps as regular publishing does, but we pay our contractors outright rather
Meaning
than.
like cover artist, editor,
Professional.
formatter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We pay professionals.
Yes. So Romance Writers of America, at one point considered self-publishing the same as vanity publishing. And they did not want anybody talking about indie publishing at all. So, literally, we would do our regular business meetings for RWA, and we would go outside and we would stand in the parking lot and talk about indie publishing for another 2 hours.
Of a local library.
Of the local library,
Libraries.
yes, we were the library parking lot group.
Parking lot.
And literally, we would stand there and talk about this stuff, and it was a path that most of us wanted to do, but RWA didn't support. So that's why we created Kentucky Indie Writers. And it's gone more of a digital version now, but, we still see each other all the time and
Well, then
it's
we
still been a
broke
really
off
good basis
into
for
this
everybody.
smaller group.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the people in our Kentucky Independent Writers Group weren't doing it full-time. We were all very serious about it, had careers, and were doing well, and decided it was more of a higher level of marketing group
Yeah.
to a certain degree, to talk about ideas, what works, what doesn't, cross-promotion, and those kind of things. So that's how this little groovy group came about. Okay, let's break for questions, and then I mean, I have a whole list of things we can talk about, but I'm curious what you guys are curious about. We have such a small, intimate group, we can just do a back and forth and talk, quite honestly. Do you guys, anybody curious about anything about publishing, about writing? We'll answer anything, and like Chris said earlier, if we don't know the answer, we will make it up.
One of us knows the answer.
One of us will know the answer, usually
One of us
Donna.
is willing to
Donna
lie
usually
about it
knows the
and make
answer,
it
yeah.
up.
Or Google one.
And don't be afraid to talk, because if you ask a question, clearly, we have enough of these. Everybody will get one of these. Donna's not actually in this, because she was on a different panel when we were in Atlanta, but this has a novella from all of us in here.
And I'd just like to point out that I'm actually wearing exactly what my cartoon character
Chris
is
did,
wearing.
Chris did this
I
cover
am
too
too.
for us.
You are. Well, you always wear purple, and I usually wear red. But I mean, I've got my pearls on. I've got. It's
Chris
like
gave-
down
Chris
to a
gave me
T. I'm a little
fangs.
embarrassed about that.
I have
so.
fangs.
And even though I'm not in here, Chris did make a little avatar for me, and it had
Pointy
Vulcan
ears.
ears. I was so
She was
excited.
she was
I was
wildly
my glasses
excited
and
about
Vulcan
that.
ears. It was just like the
I
best.
still
thing
have
ever.
it.
So tell me, I mean, you've got 5 people sitting here doing this. It seems like you guys over here want to write. I mean, does anybody else, do you have, do you want to write? Okay.
I already wrote my first one.
Excellent,
Yay.
excellent. So ask us, and you can also ask us as a reader, anything you want. I don't know what do you guys actually like to read? We'll just ask you guys, we'll turn it around. What do you like to read?
I just like to read,
Anything, yeah.
and so I'm not specific to a
Genre, yeah.
I tend to be very obsessive, so when I find someone who's writing I like, I will get everything.
Yeah.
I like you.
We like
You look
those
familiar
people.
to me too.
And one of the things that I enjoy is on your webpage on Facebook, you promote other people,
I do.
and that gives me opportunities to look at
What's your
different.
name?
Tammy Hansen.
I recognize your name.
I
Don't I?
recognize
I
her.
don't
We've
post a
seen
lot,
her
I just
before.
browse, I'm a stalker.
That's okay. Yeah,
Has
she
she
looks,
been at Woodford before?
No,
she
I
doesn't
live in
look familiar
Michigan.
to me. She looks familiar to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, nobody can feed the beast of the reader. I mean, I'm a reader, I'm a beast too. Nobody can feed my appetite all the time. So cross-promotion with people that you admire, same genre, doesn't even have to be same genre, just good writing, is smart. It's a pay it forward mentality that I think is just good karma, and you do. I've found other writers that way that I love to read. What do you enjoy reading?
I like books like Patterson writes.
Yeah, James Patterson, yep.
Childs.
Yep,
And you probably
you're gonna like Chris.
You're
and
gonna
Heather.
like Jane Doe.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you would, yep. What do you like to read?
I like really anything, but paranormal is my favorite.
Dude! Okay, yeah. All right, what do you like to read?
I'll read anybody, but everything you guys write, I like.
That's great, you can stay. Okay, what do you like to read?
I don't get a chance to read that much, but when I do, I like that. What's that, Holland Corbin?
Oh, yeah.
My husband loves him.
Yeah, cool. What do you like to
You
read?
know what I like to read.
I-
I've read all of you.
That's
We
good.
like you too.
Yeah, we like it that you've read all over.
Bruce, putting you on the spot, Bubba. What do you like to read?
You might want to say your wife.
I mean, I've read everybody here, but what was that guy that we?
Kevin Hearn.
Yeah, Kevin Hearn.
Kevin Hearn. And because we have such a big group, I'm gonna put everybody on the spot. What do you like to read, my friend?
I run the range, but give you an idea of like probably the last 2 books I read that I really loved. I finally read The Girl with All the Gifts,
Yeah,
which was phenomenal.
yeah.
And then, what was the name of that? I can't say the name of the book. It's got some language in it.
Got it.
But it was a book about elections and gerrymandering.
Got it.
Great
Yes,
book,
yes,
great
yes, yes,
book.
yes, I know what you're talking about. In the back there, what do you like to read?
I kind of go through phases. So I went through a vampire phase, and I kind of would go back into that, and I kind of went through a fairy phase, and I like to listen to nonfiction. It's kind of harder for me to
Me
actually
too.
read it, but I
Yeah.
really like to listen to it. So I
Yeah.
do a lot of like food politics, Michael Pollan, and
Okay.
those kind of books. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
I listen to business books too.
Yeah, it's harder
Because
for
they're
me
dry to
to
read.
make it
Daniel
through.
Pink and Malcolm Gladwell.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you listen to his podcast?
Yes.
Oh, I loved that.
Yeah, me too.
What do you like to read?
I'm into historical fiction a lot, and then I'm discovering the paranormal right now. So I'm into it right now.
Great. All right, now I question you all. Would you guys like to ask any questions? I mean, because we can start going into how we do what we do, but I'm curious if there's anything you would like to know. And if you, first person who asks a question gets a book.
Last person to ask a question.
And the
gets
last
a
one
book.
doesn't get your book, baby.
And everyone in between.
Because clearly we don't have enough. What's your question,
Can we
hon?
sign these? We have to sign.
Okay,
We'll sign it.
you wrote your book.
Yeah.
Okay, you have your book done. What do you do next? I mean, I've read the how to publish a book and all that stuff, and how to write your query letter, but what do I do next?
Well,
How do I
I'm
keep
curious,
it
how do
in
you envision yourself publishing? Do you want to publish through New York or do you want to go indie?
Anyway.
I will tell you, I was with Kensington is one of my series is with Kensington, and I had a wonderful, terrific artistic experience. I have absolutely nothing bad to say, all of it. I loved the people I worked with. I will say financially speaking, being indie has been awesome. I will say that. If you were, whether or not you go indie or traditional, you need to have it edited. You don't need to find a cover if you're going traditional. It depends on what you're doing. But I would not send an unedited manuscript
Especially your first one.
anywhere. Anywhere.
Yeah.
Have you written
Yeah,
a book? What is it? What kind of book?
it's mostly romance.
Yeah. Guys, what do you, to jump in?
You know, I would look for editors of other books like yours and start asking.
How do you find them?
A lot of times, there are references in
The back
the
of the
front
book,
of,
right.
Yeah, you'll see who
I
it's
put it
edited
in my
by.
copyright information.
Yeah, my
so
editor is
that-
always thanked in the back of my book, and it's on the copyright page.
So if you have a book that you really like, send the author a message. It's like, hey, can you please tell me, is your editor taking any new people?
Are you on social media? Okay. There are tons of Facebook groups of authors, of aspiring authors, of romance authors, of military romance authors, of suspense authors, and you can join some of these groups. A lot of them are informational, and there's tons of great, just searching the internet too, looking for editors of romance. And then you want to look at people that have been with them, reviews of them, all those kind of things. Actually it's research, it's research. Anybody?
I also have a huge list on my website.
Yeah, Jennifer does.
It's under author helps, jmmadden.com, and look under author helps. And there's a huge section for cover artists and formatters and editors.
And most editors will let you send them a chapter or two, and they'll do just kind of a sample edit to see if it's a good fit. You might be looking for more content or more line editing. Yeah, it depends on what you're looking for. Some of them do a whole range of it in one reading. Some like to read it multiple times. Some only do one kind. So you have to know what you think you need in your book.
When they ask for the first 3 chapters of something, is it literally your first 3 chapters?
Yes.
Or is
Yes.
it like
Yes.
put all your information?
They wanna see how you do
no.
the book.
A synopsis, which I find gas-inducing, that's the description of your book. Like you're taking a 95K or a 100K or an 80K book and scooshing it, into a couple of pages. That, I think, is very difficult.
That's difficult.
And also writing a blurb for your book, the blurbs you read on the back of books.
That's why I send mine to Donna.
Yeah, we do, yeah, I send them to
Pass
Donna
them
and
around.
Chris, we all have to,
Does
that's
this make
harder.
sense?
It's harder than writing a book.
Oh, it is.
It's, because what you wanna do, you wanna grab, it's like the first page of your book, the first 2 pages of your book better grab that reader, or else they're gonna put that book down.
The reason they want the first 3 is that opening sentence or 2, a paragraph, they wanna see how you handle that. They wanna see how you end a paragraph and whether you can pull a person into chapter 2 with your ending. They're looking at a lot of things, and 3 chapters will definitely tell them. I would almost say 1 page would,
One page would.
but.
I mean, after and even a chapter, like they said, after a few pages of editing, you will probably be able to take that and edit your whole book again before you send them the rest.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah.
I mean, what you should be looking at too before you do any of that, do you know what dialogue tags are and all that? Like he said, she said.
Yeah.
Okay, look and make sure that you're formatting right. And the way to do that, guys, is to read. Read. I read voraciously. I personally don't think that you can be a writer without reading.
I listen.
Yeah, well, it depends on too, like Jen and I, we have kids in high school.
We
even-
drive.
Yeah, we drive, Heather, I mean, you do what you have time to do. I've written a bunch of books in my car, waiting at lacrosse practice or soccer practice. You know, my laptop travels. It's the best job ever being a mom, is part of what I do. But that's a good question. I hope that, yeah, you really go to Jennifer's website, JM Madden, and you guys can come up and find that stuff afterwards too. All right, look for a question, babies. You got a question?
How did you guys start writing? Because I thought about it, but I don't know how to start.
Well,
Set your butt in the
chair, yeah. And you have to not, come on up here and get this in. You have to not care if it sucks or not. That's the thing. If you are, when I was an actor, I used to do something called punch-up scripts, which means I wrote jokes for television shows and film and stuff like that. But I never had finished anything. I had the beginnings of the Great American Novel. There's a whole bin in my attic, and let me tell you, they are heinous. However, it wasn't until I got with these guys. Well, I told my husband, I'm like, I can't find anything to read. I'm gonna write a book. He's like, all right. And I did. And it's not the book I sold, I lied about it. It's the first book I wrote. And oh my God, there had to be more capitals and exclamation points. And I decided that I was never gonna use the word said, which, oh my God, guys, it's a perfectly good word. But I thought that's overused. I'm not gonna use the word said. My dialogue tags are horrifying. But Jennifer read it, and she told me that I was like J.R. Ward on crack. And that I had, you know, my form wasn't very good, but my storytelling was. You just have to do it. That's the thing.
And you get better with each book you write.
Yes.
So the more you write, the better you get. And you'll learn that you need to show instead of tell when you're putting together your story. And then you're gonna look back at your story and be able to tell that you've arced a character and you've arced a storyline, things that you don't really think about when you first start, but you have to start, you have to write, because even best-selling authors, I mean, I've even heard, you know, Dan Brown talk about the fact that you have to write through, and Stephen King talks about it in his book, you have to, even when you are writing in the middle of something and you don't feel like you're going, you gotta write through it, so you just keep writing. You might go back and take a bunch of stuff out, and we all edit everything. I sent my first book to Jennifer, and she goes, your story starts chapter 3. I was like, what? I wrote all those beautiful words in those first 3 chapters, and she was like, and I did, I cut them. I cut the first 3 chapters out.
And that still happens.
It does.
I've
Oh,
written
yeah.
over 50 books, and I still do that.
You
I did that on the book I
in.
just wrote.
After it's done, you start
I went back
cutting.
and starting in the wrong
Yeah,
place.
so you
Yeah.
always overwrite, then you edit it back, and then, you know, then you'll send it off and your editor will be like, okay, this is really interesting, but I know in your head you know what's going on, but nobody else does.
Yeah.
So you need to explain what you're really talking about and where this is kind of going, because the reader's lost. Because you're in, you know, in your own head, you're thinking, everybody's like going on this adventure with me, and I've got everybody, you're like, yeah, but they're not, because if you leave something out, and so when someone else reads it cold, it's like, that was kind of cool, but I have absolutely no idea
What you're talking about.
where you're going.
You know what
with
that
it. So
leads to
fix it.
though, which is interesting, there's a difference, and we're different up here. There's pantsing, which means writing by the seat of your pants, and there are plotters that plot their books. I am 100% pantser. I sit down with a vague idea, and I just start to write. And miraculously, it has come together for me, and we're on film, so I'm gonna be, it's better, when everything's, I know, you can, I have a potty mouth. It's when you're writing and you realize, that you gave yourself these gifts and everything starts tying together is better than like an
Dark chocolate.
dark chocolate. All right. So I honestly, you know, and even if I think I know where something is going, it usually takes a completely different direction. So I'm 100% pantser. Donna.
I am too, but in 50 books, I have gotten to the point where chapter 17 and 18 of a book that's 100,000 words, I know it's going to get there, I'm going, yeah, okay, back to the drawing, I outline a little bit, but that's about the only time. But mostly, I am a pantser because I like going from scene to scene. What comes next?
Well, I
What
get
are they
bored.
doing? I get bored too.
And if I plotted, I
Yeah.
would never finish it,
Yeah,
because then I know
that's-
it's gonna happen and it's not.
And
a surprise.
I agree with that. I also write comedy, and so comedy's not something that you can plot, I don't think. Do you?
No, timing is, well, timing I don't think can be taught. I think timing,
It's about, you get to this scene and then you have this little moment, it's a rush, where you go, oh, I can make that funny, I know what to do here, or that person can say this. There was one scene in the book I just finished, and Jennifer wrote, when she wrote it, these two are my critique partners, she wrote LOL on there, and I was
I
like,
think it was LMAO.
yeah.
that is a bad word in it.
I didn't say it.
But, so it's a rush. For me, pantsing is a rush, and part of why I do this and want to keep doing it for the rest of my life is that little feeling that you get from it. And the books should be seen as that, a fun project that gives you something from your gut.
It feeds you
Yeah.
somehow. It's cool. Jen?
I'm a poncer.
Ploncer? Ploncer?
Or a plantzer.
Plotzer. No, planter. I like planter. Sounds like a
So,
disease though.
in my Lost and Found series, I was completely a pantser. But the further I got in my series, there are 16 books in the series now, as well as the 3 book spinoff that I have now. So the further I got in the series, it's like I need to start planting people, and I need another guy to do this, and oh my gosh, it's like we've got babies coming out everywhere, and it's like I gotta make, allocations for these babies and the marriages and all this sort of stuff. So you do eventually, I have a computer program called Scrivener, and Scrivener helps you plot, and it helps you keep track of your notes. It's like, this guy is 6'2" with blue eyes and, sandy blonde hair. And because you forget those details. 16 books, well, we'll say 19 books. 2 characters, your main heroes, kids, you lose track of all the little tiny details.
People also
So-
do it in a Bible, like they
Yes.
have a series
Mhm.
Bible to go back and look. Because you forget, it's really easy to forget.
But I plot more now than I have before. I will say
Chris?
that.
I'm a plotter.
She's a sticky
She's a
note
heavy-duty
plotter.
plotter.
I'm a heavy-duty plotter, so I have whiteboards all in my office, and I don't write in Scrivener, although I have it. It's distracting to me because there's too much going on. It's like a white page, and that's just me being old school. Jen's young.
I'll show you a secret. You can do that.
Yeah, ugh, that gives me hives. So I have I have whiteboards, and on the whiteboards, I'll have a plot line, and I'll have all the important characters and all their characteristics listed underneath it. I'll also have locations that are in the book, like listed, so I know exactly where all of those are. And Post-it notes. I am the queen.
She's a queen.
Of Post-it notes. So I put things through, and then I'll know, I can look at the timeline
You're
and
doing
know.
color coded too.
They're color coded. I'll know where characters are, and I'll know, what's going, and it just helps me to keep everybody straight. And then, because some of my plot lines are really, I don't want to say complicated.
They're
but
intricate.
They're very
They're
intricate and interesting, and if
do
I
Scrivener
want
too.
What'd you say?
She's trying to sell Scrivener here. She's like, you can do that with
You
Scrivener.
all stop about that?
No, I
Yeah.
wish I did.
No, I own the program, I have it, I just don't use it, but then that helps me to know that I've accomplished everything that I wanted to, from the beginning to the middle to the end, and I can see it arc before I really, now, in between those things,
I would
I'm-
call you a pantser.
I'm pantsing in between. I don't know how I'm gonna get from, I know how I'm gonna get to A F, you know, I skip a lot of the alphabet in between, and then I pants in between those things. But, I mean, this last series that I just put out, which was 3 books, I knew the end of book 3 before I started book 1. So, I mean, and then that makes it easy for me to plant those characters in where I need to. So it's just, you know, it keeps it exciting for them. I would be up all night if I didn't know that my Post-it notes and I literally take, you're all gonna laugh, but before the whiteboard comes down and I start a new book, I have photographs of all of them. And I have notebooks with all of my notes and all of my research and everything that has to go into each particular book. And I have a whole file catalog of the research and everything that went into every single book. And I have index cards that go with all of them. I mean, it's all.
I have a whiteboard I haven't cleaned since 2015.
Yeah, see? And instead I keep it all. But I'm old school. I'm like, you know, I learned how to. Did you ever even type on a typewriter? You're young.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I had a word processor.
I mean, you know, I had to
Word
like.
processor.
I have a folder.
That is not a typewriter. A word
I
processor.
can't
Wait,
wait.
Spiral
You know what?
books.
I learned how to type, typing that book I lied about. I didn't type.
She was like,
Because I was I know, it was horrible, and I will get to that story in a little while, 'cause it's ugly. But anyway, Heather, pants plot, baby.
So I have probably changed throughout my books, but I feel like I've finally settled into exactly how I do most of them. And it's probably closer to the way Chris does it, except not as neurotic.
I was waiting for the I was waiting for somebody to call me that. I was waiting for it. It's out in the open now.
But say it with love.
I do love her
It's just
organization
what she
though, because
writes.
that to me, I love that, but, so I have to know my ending before I start. I have to know my middle, and I usually know a few plot points in between all that, and then I pretty much pants between. But I know where I'm going the whole time, and if I get stuck and I'm getting too close to my middle point, and I'm nowhere close to the word count, I have to back up and I have to do some plotting. I was like, you know, there's gotta be some more that happens between that and the middle, and so that's kinda how I plot that. But, you know, one of the things I was gonna suggest when writing, I don't know if any of y'all read craft books. I am a craft book junkie, or at least I used to be. My favorite craft book is Plot and Structure by James Scott Bell. I mean, it's just not, if I'm really struggling to plot a book, I will go back and kind of look at and how he describes how to structure a book. Because whether you plot or pants, you've got to structure that book at some point.
There's still acts.
Yeah, you're gonna have to do it before you write, or you're gonna have to do it after you've written. I mean, it has to have that
Or
structure.
you pray.
Or you pray that just works out.
And it has, it can.
I grew up reading romance novels.
Right.
I mean, literally, it's like I'm hiding them in junior high, you know, and it's like, you know, I'm reading my romance novels.
Bodice
and-
rippers.
Inside your textbook.
And
Yes.
Harlequins.
Yes, little
and-
Harlequins. I didn't like the thick bodice rippers. I liked the little
Little ones.
Harlequins that
Me
you could
too.
hide. And if I got caught, it's like, you know, I had good grades, so it's like, just put it away. So I grew up reading that stuff, so I kind of
Have a
trained myself to
feel.
have an
Yeah, yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
What, everybody knows what makes a good story.
Mhm.
And it kind of comes back to your point, how you started. I started because I didn't like the way they ended. Because, you know, you'd have this swooning virgin, we call them TSTL, too stupid to live.
Mhm. I hate weak heroines.
We
I
hate weak
hate
heroines.
them.
Yeah. If you're
Nobody
gonna write a
cares.
woman,
Write a strong.
Write a strong one.
send her out to kill terrorists.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's
Perfect.
right. Yeah,
We
none
all
of that's
write
right.
strong women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would rewrite all those weak heroines, and I would put myself in there, and I would make it how I wanted it. And that's how I started writing, scribbling in notebooks.
And the good thing about just listening to this is there's no one right way.
Right.
There's just not. Everybody figures out their own way that works for them. And that can also evolve and change too. Very much so.
The important thing is to write. I will tell you
Yeah.
this, a quick story. When I was in college, a man named, and he's since passed away, you probably have his books here, his name's David Dick. He used to be a CBS News correspondent. He was a Kentucky writer. And he was my journalism professor at UK. And so in this journalism class, I was sent to go down and cover a story at a courthouse. And it was about these 2 young boys who'd been killed in Louisville, but they had had a change of venue, and the court case was being held in Lexington. And so everybody went down, wrote the story, and I actually met one of the young boys' grandfather in the hallway and had a chat with him. And instead of writing about the trial, I wrote about the family in my piece. And so, which was really more my speed anyway. I mean, I was never gonna be a hard-hitting journalist, you know. And he read my piece out loud, and then he kept to me after class and he said, you're gonna do a lot of things in your lifetime. You're gonna do a lot of things to make money as far as, you know, like jobs and things, but never stop writing. Never stop writing. And so that's my advice. Don't ever stop writing. I don't care if you go to CPA school or become a cop or you're an actress or whatever. If you love to write, don't stop. Don't ever stop writing. And so, and I mean, God rest his soul, his son, Sam Dick, is like on Channel 27. You guys don't get that channel here, but that's like for us south. But he was just a wonderful influence in my life. And he said that to me, and to this day, I'll remember it. So don't stop writing. Don't
Yeah,
stop.
but first you gotta start.
Yeah.
And whether you do it on a computer or pen and paper, pencil and paper, whatever, just do it.
And finish something.
Finish it.
Don't let
And
something
don't care
sit
if it,
and finish.
and don't be harsh on yourself. Just, if it sucks, it sucks. First drafts suck.
And let people read your stuff. Because, you know.
Not your mom.
Not your mom.
Because your mom is gonna tell you it's great.
Yeah.
Well, you need cheerleaders and you need
Yeah.
critics. It's great to have
Yes.
your cheerleaders to read your books and be like,
Yeah, but
this
if
is
you really
so
want,
great.
if
And
you
then
really want something honest, you gotta go to somebody who's not one of your closest friends, who's just gonna be amazed that you actually wrote that many words.
And they're not gonna worry about hurting your feelings.
We hurt each other's feelings respectfully.
Yeah.
But our books are better for
And
it.
don't be afraid to get that feedback. I was always terrified to get that negative feedback. It would just crush me.
But you know what? I think
Now.
a lack of fear of failure is a great thing.
Beautiful
I
thing, yeah.
couldn't care less. You cannot be great unless you fail, unless you're willing to fail, unless you're willing to look stupid, or you have to be willing to do that. You're putting, it's kind of, we don't sell shoes, we don't sell a product, we sell our imaginations. So, there's a risk in that. There's a risk in that, but you have to need to want to do it. All right, who else wants a book? Who's gonna ask a question? Yes?
I've asked you guys a million questions, but I'll check on a new one.
Yeah.
How do you guys stop yourself from editing while you're writing?
I don't know. I don't give a crap. What I do when I write, when I pick back up, I go, usually to the chapter before that was there, so that I make sure that I have a flow, that a connection, and I really don't edit a whole lot. And I tell you what, if I get stuck, because I pants and I get stuck, and what people would call writer's block, I just know that I took a wrong turn and that I shouldn't have gone that way. So I'll go back to where it feels right, and then I just write on. So I can kind of say I don't really get writer's block, but I don't know. I guess I don't self-edit. I just write forward to see what's gonna happen. So don't just write forward. It would be my advice. Don't stop and reread and reread and reread and reread.
That's my problem.
Yeah.
I do.
Donna, do you do that?
Oh, yeah.
I do
Well,
that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't.
Because I came from an 18-year career where my job was to edit
Right.
everything I saw. And so I have a hard time turning that off. But I make a deal with my muse, and so far we are a piece.
He has a
with each other.
ponytail. We call him ponytail guy.
Ponytail guy, right, because my muse is a male. He likes to mess with me. What I do is I do a little bit like what Robin does. I promise myself, I'm gonna go ahead and finish this, and then I'll go back tomorrow. And so I kind of make deals, and that deal.
It's like treadmill deals.
Yes,
Like,
yes,
I'm not gonna
treadmill
look at the
deals.
time
Yes,
until this song is over.
that's exactly
And
right.
see how many minutes it went. I make deals with the treadmill all the time.
But you're gonna struggle with it. If it's in your nature to do that, you're gonna struggle, and you gotta find a way to shut it down. Because by editing as you go along, you're taking away the voice.
Yeah.
You're taking away the originality. You're sanitizing it too soon. You don't want that. You want to get the whole thing down and then go back and revise or do a little something with it. I do overlap. I do what I call overlap.
Yeah, so you connect.
I connect it, yeah, so I can connect the next scene with the scene before.
Jen?
I struggle with that. I edit because Scrivener, if you
Scrivener's
mistakenly
evil.
edit-
I think Scrivener's evil.
Well, it redlines everything, and Word does too.
Yeah, it does.
But a lot of times, I think you can fix Word so that
As you
it'll
go.
fix it,
Yeah.
And I don't like to see that on my page. So I do tend to go back and I linger over words a lot. I get a lot of fan mail from people that I write about suicide and PTSD, and I do linger over the way that I phrase things and the way that I say things, because I don't want anybody hurt by what I write. And I don't want to be negligent in the way I word things.
And she's not. What she writes is gorgeous. It's
So
gorgeous.
I have to be careful with that, because, writing suicides and stuff like that, I mean, that's stuff that, you have to take your time with. So I let myself do that. And then I count out the words as I get close to my deadline and
You write faster when you get closer to the deadline.
oh, heck yeah.
Oh, gosh. Those fingers are
Watch
like
me flying.
on fire.
Yep.
I go back, so when I stop for the day, and I hit save like 15 times, and then back it up to
To make sure
Carbonite
that
and
you
whatever, and all those other
don't
places,
lose
so you
your
don't lose your
stuff, yeah.
manuscript. The next day when I start again, I'll go back and I'll reread the chapter that I wrote before, so it gets me back into the headspace, like back into the adventure and back into the headspace, and I will lightly line edit that one thing as I'm reading through it, and then I'll keep moving on. What I find later when I read through it again before I send it off to my editor, because I'll read it out loud, like in the room, out loud to
That's a
myself.
good
And I catch like redundant words that I'll use that I wouldn't have normally caught unless I was reading it aloud. And I'll find that sometimes, and this has happened 2 or 3 times, that I'll write a scene, and then suddenly right after that, I write a very eerily similar scene where they kind of say exactly the same thing, but in a little different way. And I'm like, I must have taken a bathroom break. And I came back and I didn't think I was, in my headspace, I've written this or I haven't written it. And so I like wrote it all over again, and it's like, oh, okay, so now I have 2 of them, which one's better, and then, toss it out. But yeah, that's I just go back enough and edit enough to move forward for the next day.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I do that when my book is going the way I want it to, but I struggle a lot with self-editing, and it's usually because I haven't quite gotten into the story yet. I'm struggling with the book I'm writing right now because I have so many distractions beyond the writing right now, and I'm finally sitting my butt in the chair and writing this week. I have to, because my deadline's coming faster than I want it to. But I struggle, and I go back and I do the same thing. I'll do a line edit, and I've had to this week because I got away from my manuscript for about a week working on something else. So I struggle with that. So if anyone does find out how to not do that, let me know, because it slows you down. Sometimes you just got to tell yourself, do read just one chapter, give yourself one chapter so you can get back into it, and then you got to push through. Because it's hard to edit when you don't even know where the story's going yet, and so it's kind of pointless. It's pointless time waste.
Unless it's just a light line. That's
Yeah, well, yeah, to
The
refamiliarize
content
myself,
of it,
that's
no
fine,
way.
but
You got a Scarlett O'Hara. I'll think about that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Move on.
Yeah.
it is something I struggle with though, so it's not an easy thing to correct
So we were
if you get into
kind
it.
of talking about this yesterday. Chris Fox does the
Mhm.
2K to 10K or 5K a day or 5K an hour.
Oh yeah, that's
An hour.
5K an hour.
Yeah, 5K an hour?
Yes.
Robin's like, I'm getting this book. Where's
I'm a
that?
fast writer, but that is not.
Chastity took notes and she listened to him, and some of it is dictation and into
okay.
Dragon,
Okay.
and the rest of it is actually typing. And basically he writes his book, does not edit it.
Mhm.
He goes one editing pass and he sends it away, and that's it.
Does he,
Somebody be sending that back to me going, why don't you take another look at this, sister?
I don't know
That's a little bit
Send
too
it.
fast.
it would make sense if I did something like that, but okay. That's something. All right, there are more books for more questions. Who's got a question?
I got some questions. So you guys mentioned a couple of times about deadlines, and you mentioned that the majority of you are independent.
I'm hybrid too. I'm out of New York and independent.
So I'm assuming you're setting your own deadlines?
Yes.
Yes and
Sort
no,
of.
yes and
Kinda.
no, because you can put up, I don't put up unfinished books, usually generally for pre-order on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, iBooks, Kobo. But if you do, you gotta write it, or you will lose your pre-order status at the vendor for a year. So there's that. So that's kind of but most of us, generally speaking, yes, they are self-imposed.
Mine's a
Deadlines.
My editor is very difficult to nail down. I have to schedule him well in advance, and I've already had to change this book's deadline.
Okay.
But if I don't make my deadline with him, then I'm kind of screwed. I have to.
There are cogs in a wheel.
Okay.
Yeah, it really is a big machine. Now, like New York, your book is done, finished, in the can, forever before it makes it out to
It's
anybody.
ridiculous.
It might be 5 years, so that book.
Well,
that
it's
you
not that
have-
long for me,
Well,
but
no,
yeah.
but you have a book finished. So if you go through your query process, and if you're wanting to look at an editor or a agent, that might be a couple years in itself. And then, assuming who
Could
you
take
get
1 or 2
with,
years.
I mean, he has to shop that around. And if a publishing company actually picks it up, it might be another year and a half before you see it. So 5 years is
Meanwhile,
not
you've written
too much.
20 other books because you
Or
have
no, or you just waited with that one book trying to get it published.
Yeah.
But no way is a wrong way. You just have to figure out.
Are you asking me how to keep a deadline?
Well,
Or-
I was
You
just
just wanna know.
curious because you kept referring to deadline, but you just said something
Yeah.
before about, I could see a lot of that is just the editor.
Yeah,
The
it's
editor
mostly
is-
self-imposed.
You gotta get the editor book
Well, and then you
by a
have to get it
certain time.
formatted, and you're working with a cover artist, and, I mean, it's a lot of things that have to come together. It's like planning a huge event, only it's with a book. 'Cause
Yeah, it's
there are
like
all
planning your
these-
wedding. I mean,
Yeah,
it's-
there's all these little pieces that have to come together right at the moment where you say, I do. Yeah, it's like a wedding, so.
Even
and
your
book-
advertising and stuff.
Yeah, and traditional publishers like that stuff done really early. Like they start sending, they give me hives because they would start emailing me and being like, "How's the book going? How's the book going?" I'm like, you just take care of it. I'm Gavon. Y'all
Yeah.
do your thing and quit making me crazy. I'll have it to you by the deadline, and I've never missed a deadline with them. But yeah, they like to have it way early, and the traditional world acts like, well, it takes this long to do all these things, and
And
as an
we know
independent
that that's
publisher,
horse
we know
too.
that it does
Yeah.
not actually
Yeah.
take that long to do those things. So
Donna, I think
it's
that's a
interesting.
point here too. What do you?
Oh, I was just gonna say, we call that the business side of what we do. You know, cause there's this time alone you spend with your story, where you're immersed in that, and you're creating that, and then you're all about the characters, all about what's happening, all about that. That's the part we all got into this for.
That's the fun
Right.
part.
Yeah.
The rest of it is a business. It's the business just like your day job is, like anything else you do. And so there's all these details Chris and Heather were talking about. All, the deadlines with the editor, which is the first thing, and believe me, we will sweat that because good editors are hard to find.
Mhm.
And time with them is precious. And you pay them a lot of money.
Mhm.
So you want to give them the best product you can. Cover artists, the same thing. I've had to change cover artists this year for the first time in my career, 5 times. So I've had a hunt for art all year long. And that's a business problem. It has nothing to do with my books, with my stories. The story will be done and I'll be waiting on a cover. Usually I get the covers done first. I've had to modify what I do. That's a business thing.
Well, there's a fine line between art and commerce. Okay? And unrealistically, it would be awesome if we could sit at home in our sweatpants and write these amazing books and they would just somehow make their way out into the world. And sure, that can happen for some people, but 1 in a million. So there's a business side, and what you have to make sure is that the business doesn't overcome the art. It's like whether it be acting or painting or writing a book, there's a fine line, but to ignore one or the other is silly. Do we work harder as indie authors than traditional authors do? Probably, yes, we do. However, the landscape has changed so dramatically in the past several years in the world of writing that even if traditional authors are not paying attention to websites, social media, this and that and the other, they're having a harder time.
Yeah.
They're having a harder time.
They're realizing they have to do a lot
Did
of
you
the
get
work
your book?
themselves anyway.
Come on up and get your book.
Oh, look, Heather's giving away her stack.
And there's the reader agreement too. I mean, if you tell them, it's like, I mean, if you build these characters up and they love these characters, it's like, oh my gosh, when is Aiden coming? So that's my new big
Yeah,
one.
we
It's
get
like, when is
emails,
Aiden coming?
we
When
get
is Aiden
emails,
coming?
when is this next book coming?
And death
It's like,
threats,
oh.
you know.
And literally, I mean, we're not joking. I mean, for Duncan, I had literally thousands of messages. It's like, when is he coming? You know, private messages, Facebook, you know.
Text
Wednesday.
messages from Bruce.
Text messages for Bruce.
Because we read faster than.
Yes.
Right, that was the point earlier
Yes.
that you made about us promoting each other, is I will write a book. I wrote, Fashionably Flawed just came out, you know, it's a what, an 85K book? And the next day people were like, where's the next one? And I'm like, I wanna go too, you know, cause I'm like, dude, for real? I know, but it's, you know, so it's just funny because I spent, you know, a good 2 months writing that book, and I write fast, but, and then, you know, so that's the thing, can't feed the beast, can't feed the beast. All right,
And so that would be my question, how much time do you typically, and I know it's gonna be different for everybody in different days, but how much time do you spend writing?
Every day,
Every
each
day.
day.
But like.
I will
hours
say,
a day?
it depends. I mean, it depends on, you know what? Because my job is the way it is and my husband travels a tremendous amount and I have kids that have activities, sometimes I will write for 8 hours, sometimes I will write for 3, sometimes I will write for 12. I tend to write at night, I tend to stay up all night, not healthy. But, it just depends, and then sometimes you forget, like, you're writing and you get so wrapped up in it and you
Lose time.
completely forget.
Start getting text messages from your kids.
You're
It's
like,
Mom,
you were
picking
supposed
me
to
up
get me,
today?"
and like, wait, people eat dinner? I mean, it's
Eating
like,
tonight.
you know, you can't, yeah, and so I don't know, for me, it varies, but I write every single day,
Yes.
even weekends.
My sweet spot's 6 hours. If I could just have 6 hours.
We just need to remember we have to stand up
Yeah.
more and
Yeah.
walk around a little bit while we do it. Jen?
I love writing in the morning. Hubby built me a new covered deck, and it's like, it's my new favorite spot in the world to write. And I can do 5K a day out there if I sit. And, you know, I have to take a week off after I do that. That's usually before a deadline. My editor's like, is it coming today? It's like, maybe.
I try to set a word count every day, and then, because I know when my deadline is, because I work in advertising, we do everything backwards, and that kind of helps in the publishing world, because that's what you have a publishing date, and then you work backwards from everything. So just like in marketing, I have a publishing date, and then I'll back it up, and then I know how many days I have, and I know how many words I need to write per day to hit that point, and then I'll have like weeks. I mean, you know, it's not in Scrivener, but it is up on a Post-it note in my office.
Damn, that's project.
Yes, it's
Exactly, but it's up there, and every day when I sit down in my computer, believe it or not, I put a Post-it note at the top, and it tells me what my word count is for the day. And when I'm finished, I mark it off, because I'm big on like lists and marking things off my list. It keeps me grounded. Otherwise, I would be out in the middle of the interstate trying to be a human speed bump. Yeah, it's a crazy place up in here, and so if I don't do that, it makes me really happy to know that I'm like. Otherwise, I'll let something fall through the cracks, and that just comes from years of business, you know. And I no longer have an assistant to like yell out the office door at to make sure something's getting done. I mean, it's just me. So I could yell at my husband, but I mean, you know, or the dog who's not gonna care. But yeah, so every day just to say, I'm gonna write this many 1,000 words a day. And then when that is done.
It might be 500. I mean,
Yeah.
don't judge yourself by what we do.
Yeah.
It's like, anything you write is better than nothing.
And then I might write on more than one thing at a time. We haven't really discussed that. Some of us can write more than one book at a time.
Yep.
And like switch head gears. I've gotten better at it. But you know, sometimes you'll like write on one thing a little bit. You know, I'll plot on something and write on something else. Or in the middle of writing a book, you'll have this great idea for another book. And so you stop and like put everything, you know, and then you like quickly tap that out and stick it on a Post-it note, just kidding now. And then, and file that away.
Stick it on a Post-it
For
note.
something, you know, and you file it away for something else, but yeah, just, you know, trying to do so many words a day. Then you can do whatever you want. You can go shoe shopping or make dinner and.
Crazy.
I didn't say this earlier, but I also use Scrivener and the little project management.
I love that thing.
I mean, it tells, I put in a date,
Yep.
and it tells me what my word count needs to be to reach that date. If I'm gonna write on Saturday and Sunday, I mean, I can really figure out kind of how, right now I need to write Monday through Sunday, and the word count is getting higher and higher every day that goes by, so.
We also sprint together, like we'll talk to each other and say, you know, are you gonna write? And then we'll hold each other accountable, like I'm starting at such and such time, and then we'll start at
I
the same
forget to
time.
call in when we do that, because if I get sucked in, I'm done. I don't.
We're texting each other and it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, staring at a blank page.
There you go. All right. Okay, you need to ask a question.
It's your turn.
What would your question be? Well, look, you come on up here and get a book. Just fine. And would you like to ask a question? You get a book.
I
Yep.
get a book?
Yeah.
How do you seriously, how do you do all that in one day? Like, Robin, you're on social media nonstop.
It seems like I am.
I know it does. Your picture has changed. Some days, like 4 times a day. And I'm like, oh my God, what is she doing?
I write comedy. I write in first person, which is something else we can talk about as well. I find